Hello students, in this video we're going to be looking at the relationship between percentages and decimals and how we can convert between the two. So if we want to convert a decimal into percentages, we are basically multiplying that decimal by 100, which is the equivalent of increasing the place values of each digit by 2 places and then attaching the percentage symbol. The percentage symbol indicates the fact that this is of 100ths places. So let's have a look at an example. If we have a number 0.314 and we want to write that as a percentage, we can think of that as converting the decimal into a percentage by increasing its place values by 2 positions or 2 places, which is the equivalent from earlier in our learning of multiplying that decimal value by 100. We then add the percentage symbol to the result to show that this is something of 100 pieces, so to speak. So let's see that working. So first of all, I have 0.314 and I'm going to increase the place value by 2 places, or again, the equivalent of multiplying by 100. So you can go and do the full multiplication of a decimal, but we know that when we multiply by 100, it's the same as moving the decimal place 2 places. So we start with where it is here at 0.314. We move it 1 place to the right, and then we move it a second place to the right. So the first time we move it, it's the equivalent of multiplying by 10. The second time we move it now is the equivalent of multiplying by 100. So that is going to give us a new number of 031.4. Now notice, it's a technicality, but notice I have not got an equal sign between these because 0.314 is not equal to, it's not numerically the same as 031.4. This is a working out step, so I'm using an arrow between. I'm not going to mark you down or tell you off if you do write equals, but it's important to start remembering, or to continue to remember, I should say, that those numbers are not actually equal to each other. They are separate numbers, and this is a step or a process to get to a result. Anyway, let's move on. So we now have this number. This is our number when we've multiplied by 100. But we look at this number and go, we don't have zeros at the front of our numbers, so we can remove that 0 to have 31.4. And again, technicality I know, but we have an equals here because these two numbers, 031.4 and 31.4, are actually equal to each other. Okay, it's just we don't have the 0 anymore. Anyway, we move on. Now that we have this number 31.4, we have to include the percentage symbol to make it equal to our original number. Okay, so 0.314 is equal to 31.4%. That percent sign is important because it's now telling us this 31.4 hundredths. Okay, without the percent sign, we have not converted. If you just said 0.314 is equal to 31.4, it's absolutely incorrect. You have to include the percentage sign at the end to make it clear that this is 31.4 hundredths. Okay? Let's move on to the other option. So this time we're converting a percentage into a decimal. And essentially we are going to do the same operation, but we are now going to divide our percentage by 100 to get back to a decimal value. So we're doing the opposite of what we just did. So the first step, if we've got 23.5% is our decimal. And we want to write it as a decimal, sorry. The first step is simply to remove the percentage symbol. Okay, so we have just a decimal value, so 23.5. Now remember, we already have changed it. 23.5% is not equal to 23.5. We are taking a step in our working out. So we start by removing the percentage symbol. We then need to divide by 100. And again, we remembered, like multiplying, we can just move our decimal point because we're working with 100. And this time we're going to be moving to the left, which is for division. So we start by moving our decimal place 1 space to the left and then 2 space. So the first time we move it, remember it's dividing by 10. Second time we move it is dividing by 100. So we move 2 decimal places. That then gives us a new number. Again, I'm using an arrow, not an equal sign, because these are not equivalent to each other. A new number of 0.235. But again, we have an issue with this, and that is we should have a 0 in the front. So we put a 0 at the front. So we now have 0.235. And that is our final answer. 23.5% is the same as saying 0.235. It's 0.235 hundredths, 235 hundredths. Okay, so that's how we've taken out our percentage sign in the end. Let's have a look at two more examples, one of each, to hopefully really understand this. You can go back and, of course, re-watch this as many times as you need, and you'll be going off to do some questions of your own shortly. But let's have a look at two more examples. So here we again have 3.9, and we want to write that as a percentage. So we think about, again, what does that mean? It means that we are going to increase the place value, or we are going to multiply by 100, basically, and then add the percentage symbol at the end to show that this is actually of 100. So let's do the steps again. We've got 3.9. We are going to move our decimal place 2 places to the right, which is the quick way of doing multiplying a decimal by 100. So we move it one time, which is multiplying by 10, and we move it a second time, which is multiplying by 100 now. So we see there is a problem here. We should have, after this 9, a 0, because we have a gap between the 9 and the decimal place mark. So we had to move 2 decimal places, so we have to fill that gap in with a 0. So we now have an answer of 390. Okay, 390 with a decimal point at the end. But we don't have a decimal point at the end because there's no zeros after that, so we can actually just remove that decimal point. So our answer becomes 390. But we now need to add our percentage sign in. So we have 390%. So we are saying 3.9 is equal to 390 hundredths, which the percent sign indicates. And if we think about it, 3 is a whole number in 3.9, and we know that a whole number is represented by 100%. So we've got 3 lots of 100%, that's 300, and 0.9 would be 90%. So it makes complete sense when we think about it. Let's try one more of the other conversions. So this time we have 179%. We want to show that as a decimal. So again, when we're going from percentages to decimals, we're essentially dividing by 100. So we start by taking off the percentage sign. So we just have the numbers, 179. We then move our decimal place 2 places to the left because that is how we quickly do division by 100. Now notice there is no decimal place, but where is the decimal really? At the end of the number. Remember, every whole number, which 179 is, technically could have a decimal place drawn at the end, but because there's no decimal values, we just don't show it. So we're going to put the decimal place in for a moment just to help us with our next step. So now we can see our decimal place. We are going to move it to the left once. That's the equivalent of dividing by 10. Moving it a second time is the equivalent of dividing by 100. So we now get a new number of 1.79. Again, a reminder, I'm not using an equal sign because these are not equal to each other. 179 is not the same as 1.79. It is a step in our process for getting an answer. So 1.79 is the equivalent of 179%. One whole, which is 100%, and 79, which is 0.79. So that is how we get our final answer. I hope this makes sense for you today. And again, I'm sorry I'm not able to be in class with you today. Please re-watch this video if it helps you. Obviously, you can also look at the information and the videos within Math Space and work with your teacher and classmates to help you to understand. You do have tasks assigned. As we talked about in the last lesson, you have the first task, which you should all try to complete, and that must be done by Sunday 5 p.m. You also have the extension task, which starts with the letters EXT on the front, and you should start that if you find you finished your work early, or definitely if you want to push yourself to go a little bit further and really consolidate your understanding of this topic, okay? Yeah, that's pretty much it. So again, my apologies for not being able to be with you today. Hopefully you'll find this not too complicated to do.